said, are you experiencing pelvic pain right now during your pregnancy? And where do you feel your pain is? Like, is it right in the very front? These are the common places people will feel pain. Like right in the front, right in your pubic bone, in your SI joints, so kind of low back, or kind of in your butt, in your hips maybe, in your low back. And I would say the most common times that women tend to experience this are when, like, for example, you've been sitting for a while and you go to get out of your chair, or you are rolling in bed, or getting out of your car, or standing on one leg in order to put your socks on or your pants on. And so let me know where it is you experience your pain. And I wanted to explain it. There's a lot of scary messaging out there around it. Oh, hi, Piper. There's a lot of scary messaging around it. And like, this is definitely something that I struggled with in my first pregnancy before I knew anything about this. And like, if you Google pelvic pain during pregnancy, you see all sorts of like scary language, like pubic symphysis dysfunction or pelvic separation. And it sounds scary, and it makes you probably scared to move. And I don't know if you noticed that, Piper, but I wanted to help explain it because it shouldn't be so scary. And I think what it does is it does make us scared to move and feel like we have no control, and we have to keep our legs together all the time. Otherwise, we're gonna, separate something, or it's gonna hurt more. And I took a course, I don't know, early on when I was doing this type of physio, because I was like, this is something I sure experienced a lot during pregnancy. I want to learn more about it. And the more I've learned about kind of what's going on in the pelvis during pregnancy, the more I'm like, oh my God, like some really simple things we can do to deal with the pain and help to understand it. So let me just kind of explain to you first, like, this is what our pelvis looks like. And before we have a baby, like, the pelvis is pretty darn stable. There's not a lot of movement. And if you feel, so I want you to feel, this is your pubic symphysis, you'll hear, touch the front of your pubic bone. Okay, so it's like way up here, touch it, and follow it all the way down until it ends. Okay, so follow it down, and that's what you're feeling is right here. Oops, right here. And there's like a kind of a disc that lives between these two halves of the pelvis. When you hit the end of the pubic symphysis, you'll be on the pelvic floor. So the pelvic floor, or the clitoris, is what you'll feel right after your pubic bone, and that's the front of your pelvic floor. And then the pelvis has like two big bones that come all the way around here. Okay, I always think of two halves of a butterfly, and they join back here. This is your SI joint. Okay, so SI because sacrum connected to the ilium, SI, or vice versa. Yeah, SI. So that's kind of why what the pelvis even looks like. What happens during pregnancy is, like, we've got this hormone cocktail, and it's there for lots of reasons. And one of the reasons it affects your pelvis is that it makes a lot of laxity or movement. Okay, and that sounds super scary, like, oh my gosh, my pelvis is separating. But I always say to people, it's supposed to. Like, you need to somehow accommodate in your body to, like, not only grow a baby, because your uterus lives inside of here, but you need to be able to grow a baby, and you need to be able to get a baby out of here in a vaginal birth. And so the hormones are helping prep your pelvis to be able to accommodate that. And so that's what happens is we get a lot of extra movement in the SI joints and in the pubic symphysis. And you can see, like, that's why people are like, why do some people have it in the front and some people have it in the back? But it's totally connected, because you can see that movement in the front affects movement in the back. Do you see that? And so that's the part that I want you to understand. It's pretty darn normal. Not everybody will get pain from that, because like, you know how some of you might have like super swollen labia and someone doesn't. You might have big cankles and someone doesn't. Like, no two pregnant women experience things the exact same. And so you might be having pelvic pain and your friend doesn't. Hey guys, to everybody that's joining, I would love for you to say, are you pregnant right now? Are you postpartum? Are you experiencing pelvic pain? And what are your questions? Because I want to make sure. I'm going to just yak for a while, and I know I'll answer some of your questions, but please feel free to ask them, because there's no dumb question, and I come here for you to be able to answer your questions. So don't feel shy. Like I said, I do this for you. I know it's hard to kind of sort out some of this information, and so please ask away. Anyways, so we've got all this movement, And lots of different things influence that. Like you already have the movement, and so things like a heavy baby going down through there, a pelvic floor that's trying really hard to help to stabilize you. Things like, I'm sure a lot of you notice how much your posture is changing as you're pregnant. And typically, so I'm broadcasting from my playroom here, but typically you start to see posture that starts to go a bit like this. Like we do what we can to kind of accommodate a growing belly, but what happens is it totally, keep in mind, this is kind of how my pelvis looks like, and when I start tipping, like the whole pelvis starts to kind of go with me, and it can affect kind of how much movement is in here, right? You might start feeling it. So yeah, things like how you carry yourself really influences it. And do you notice during pregnancy how your butt feels flat? And maybe stand up right now and just notice. Just stand without thinking about it and notice, like, are you clenching your butt? Even if you're postpartum, like a clenched butt, like you'd think that means that your glutes are really strong, but it kind of means that they're like holding on for dear life and they don't necessarily feel strong there. But the glutes are huge muscles that help to keep this tight, compressed. And so if your glutes aren't firing very well, you could very easily be getting movement in there. You know what I always refer to this as? I call this wonky pelvis. So I tell my clients, like, just picture that it's wonky pelvis, like you've got more movement in there than normal. So we talked about the glutes. The glutes are kind of needed to be able to hold all of this nice and stable. The other thing is, how many of you notice that your groin muscles are tight? And what I would do is I would kind of suggest, like maybe you sit down and try, sitting like this. Do you feel tight through here? Or do you feel tight when you do like kind of like a lunge through here? Okay. So there's muscles that attach on the pubic bone, like our groin muscles, and go all the way down to our knees. But what that's doing up top, so if those muscles attach here, okay, they kind of attach, if they're tight, which they often are in pregnancy, partially because our body is doing so many things to help support us, and certain muscles like kind of like tighten up, like the glutes. You're like, whoa, things are changing. But if these are tight, these groin muscles, especially one more than the other, which you'll commonly find, you'll end up getting, well, it's hard to kind of see through the camera, but you'll be getting almost like, you can get almost like a shearing or a pulling on one side of the pelvis that you wouldn't normally get as much when you're not pregnant. But again, because of extra movement, those tight muscles can have an effect at the front, kind of be pulling. And again, remember, if you have an effect at the front, you could be having an effect at the back. So that's something else that I would look at. I would look at someone's posture, how they're carrying themselves. I would look at their glutes and how well those are stabilizing. I'd look at their groin muscles. Like, is something kind of pulling a bit at the front? I would look at their pelvic floor and I would want to know, like, is that working well? Like, does it feel like it knows how to tighten well? And does it know how to relax? Everybody pictures during pregnancy that everything in their, like down in their pelvic floor is loosey-goosey. And you know how I said that we have wonky pelvis during pregnancy? So I think a lot of people picture that we have wonky pelvic floor. But generally, that's not really what muscles do. Muscles kind of like tighten when they don't feel as stable. And so sometimes your pelvic floor can be kind of hanging on for dear life, which doesn't allow nice movement. And the pelvis is supposed to be very movable. Like, you think about how much, every time we walk, every time we climb the stairs, every time we lift something up, like a lot of stability has to come through our pelvis, and it's just not overly stable during pregnancy. So just thinking about some of those factors. Another thing that I would be thinking about is, notice, and we kind of touched on this in posture, but your ab muscles, your six-pack muscles attach on the top of the pelvis, okay? So they come all the way from up here, like up from our rib cage, and they attach on the pelvis. And what's one of the things that happens during pregnancy? We talked about posture and how we start to sound more and more like this. So think about how my abs are kind of being lengthened and pulled from my pelvis a bit in this position. But then, you know how I said that it's kind of a built-in mechanism in our body that we start to get movement through here, okay? That's also partly why diastasis happens, is that we have to have a built-in mechanism to get that much stretch between our six-pack muscles, okay? So six-pack muscles are starting to separate, just like the pelvis is feeling wonky, right? In order to make space for a baby. But those six-pack muscles also attach to the pelvis. And they, just like the groin muscles can have the effect of pulling down, the ab muscles can have the effect of pulling up, right? So you just end up getting more movement that you're not used to. So those are some of the things that I would be considering. And we touched on the pelvic floor. I also want to say like the pelvic floor is very much connected with the rest of our core muscles, and the pelvis is in charge of a lot of stability. So there's a lot going on with the whole body in general. What are some of the things that we do? Okay, you guys are quiet. Is there not any questions? Does nobody have questions for me? I'm just yakking. You guys shoot me your questions. Anyways, some of the things that we are, this is some of the stuff I definitely did before I learned more about this. And I think a lot of women are told, like, just keep your legs together so that your pelvis doesn't move, and just avoid all of that pain. And like, one of the things that I think is important to know is, like, first of all, you have to move. Like, we're not porcelain dolls as pregnant women. Like, we're meant to kind of go through all this. But I think having a better understanding of what certain muscles do and what you can do about it can be really helpful. One of the things that a lot of women believe they're supposed to do is keep their legs together all the time. Like, never move them apart. But do you know what that'll do is that'll make your groin muscles tighter and tighter and tighter, right? So I often tell people, like, sit unlike a lady. Don't sit like a lady. Let them kind of stay open, because you're not hurting your pelvis by letting your legs come open. I like to teach people how to not, like, obviously I want them to kind of be able to stretch their groin muscles if that's the problem. But I also want to make sure that they stay in touch with their glutes, okay? So because those glutes are huge stabilizers, and they're important muscles to be able to feel in control of. So this is what I often suggest to women. Whether you're sitting on a chair, so I'm sitting on a kid's chair right now, but I want you to think about your butt muscles, and I want you to think about putting a little bit of pressure down into your heels and feeling, I'm going to sit to my side so you can see my butt. But you can see can you see how I tense my glutes? And I'm trying to think about them both coming on for a count of 2, and then I'm letting them off. And then I'm going to try the right side, 1, 2, off. Left side, 1, 2, off. Together, 1, 2, off. Now I'll start with the other side. Left, 1, 2, off. Right, 1, 2, off. But what I'm trying to do there, I'm trying to see if one feels weaker than the other, and if they feel like they can come on at all, because that would be something that is worth working on. Another position that I often tell people to work on, that is laying down. So I've got my feet together, and I'm thinking of both, 1, 2, off, right, 1, 2, off, left, 1, 2, off. I'm squeezing my heels together. Together, 1, 2, off. And then alternate. And again, the goal would be that you are trying to make your glutes feel like they both fire, because then you should notice, okay, let's say, I want you to try this actually. Sit in a chair and just stand up and down, like stand up, sit down, like 3 times, and just feel what it feels like. Then for the next 3 times, connect your glutes, then stand up. So see what happens if you try to get some like muscle control to give you stability, then stand up. And you should notice really quickly that you feel, oh, that feels more stable. So try that. That's usually something I get people to kind of work on during their day so that they, so they feel in touch with their glutes. And then I always say, you got to use them. When you are anticipating pain, you got to use them. Another common example, putting your socks on or your pants on. Anytime you go to lift one leg, you probably feel like, whoa, like that's sore. Try it. Just try lifting your leg and notice, like, what does it feel like? Then try to connect your glutes before you lift your leg. So if I'm going to lift this leg, then I'm going to contract this glute first. So contract and lift. And then you should feel like, oh my gosh, that feels more stable. Try that. One more I want to tell you. Rolling in bed. How many of you feel like you do something like this? You wake up and you're like, oh my God, I gotta pee, it's gonna hurt so bad. And so you're kind of like, keep my legs together like a mermaid. Oh, keep it together, it's gonna break. Try this. You wake up, you're sore. Picture wonky pelvis, needs support. Glutes on, glutes off. Glutes on, glutes off. Wake them up. Then use your glutes to roll over. Okay, so if I'm gonna roll to my left, I'm going to think about my glutes engaging, almost like a bridge, to roll myself over, okay? So that my pelvis feels stable. Glutes on, I feel more stable. Try that. Okay. Still no questions. Oh, you guys, either you're listening to me and going like, Melissa, yak, or like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. I would love to hear from you. I would love for you as you're watching this. Can you please tell me, like, have you tried any of these yet? Like, I kind of want you to pause this. I want you to try it, and I want you to tell me what you feel. Does it feel like it makes a difference? Does it not? Because you have to keep in mind that this is very general. I haven't assessed you. But these are just little things I want you to try to kind of experiment with your body a little bit and just notice like, oh my gosh, I actually have, more control over this than I think. Another thing I want to just quickly mention, pregnancy support belts. Yes, Kim, this rolling over is good for C-section recovery too. Absolutely, that's a good way to roll in and out of bed, like for diastasis as well during pregnancy and postpartum while you still feel like really weak and feel unconnected through some of your core muscles. It's a really good way to, give your body a little bit of support. Absolutely. Pregnancy support belts. Totally, Kate. Feel like you're falling apart. That's exactly how I described myself during especially my first pregnancy and postpartum after my first. And I just felt like I was clunking around. I couldn't believe how much, like anytime I did any type of exercise, this was postpartum, I would go do something and then I'd come back and I'd feel kind of okay during the exercise. And then after I sat for a while, I'd go to get up and I felt like someone was stabbing me in the front of my pelvis. And this is all before I knew anything about like pregnancy and postpartum. Like I was really green with all of this when I had my first baby 7 years ago. And it wasn't until I started kind of like seeing someone else to take a look at my body. They're like, Mel, you have no glutes. I'm like, sure, I have great glutes. I do all these squats and everything. But then when they actually tested them and tried to get me to just squeeze them, I had no idea. So it was like, I always describe like, you can still have wonky pelvis postpartum. Like it's not always just because of hormones postpartum, but because of so many changes, like your belly's gone through, your posture's gone through, your pelvis has gone through, that sometimes your body just like needs those wake ups and kind of reminders of like, listen, this is how you're supposed to function. Now, can you please stop being so lazy? And I think that these aches and pains and these feelings are totally scary because they can be really intense, but also too, like the Google does not, like there's all sorts of language around dysfunction and separation, and that sounds scary. I can't tell you how many clients come into the clinic and they're like, Melissa, I was just told like my pelvis is separating. What am I going to do? I'm like, oh, congratulations. Like it sounds like your body's doing a good job. Like I always say, it doesn't feel good, but again, just understanding is half of it. Pregnancy support belts. I'm a huge fan during pregnancy, and I think a lot of the messaging out there, or people believe. They're like, should I get that? Is it going to make me lazy? No. It's kind of like, I always think of it's like wearing a knee brace for tennis. If it's going to get you out to play tennis, then by all means, wear your knee brace. Do you sometimes need to do some exercises outside of tennis to try to make it stronger? Absolutely. And I would say that the pregnancy support belt is not going to take everything away because it can't substitute for your muscles. But I'll show you I'll just give you one example. This is the one I wore. I recommend it a lot because it is so sexy. For everyone that doesn't know me, I'm very sarcastic. Okay, so basically what this does is it wraps around the front of my pelvis and kind of gives it a bit of a hug. I like this one because it has these extra things here that you can tighten, and it gives you even more support. Okay, so it's nice and wide to give me a lot of support. Felt awesome on my back. Felt really good through my SI joints and gave me a lot of support at the front of my pelvis. And it doesn't look like it, but it actually helped me feel like it was like lifting my belly a little bit, so I didn't feel like I had to like hold it. So I loved this, and most people that I put it on them, or let them try it in the clinic, and as soon as they put it on, they're like, oh my God. And so again, it's kind of just like giving it a bit of support. You don't have to wear it all day. Generally, I tell people when you're up and about, like let's say exercising or walking, or maybe you stand a lot for work, it can be a really good option. I find that when you sit down, it kind of pinches a bit. So if you sit a lot for work, I found I didn't wear it at work because I sit a lot. But if I was exercising or puttering around the house, then it was really helpful to me. No, it won't make your muscles weak, but I would still figure out what muscles would be helpful for you to stretch or strengthen, because they can be at your beck and call when you need them. For example, like I showed you, getting out of the chair and all that stuff. So that's where the muscles will come in. And I think that they both can be really helpful. I just want to show you something really quick. Those belts, you might hear them called like pregnancy support belt or SI belt or something like that. There are also SI belts that are meant for non-pregnant people. And so I see a lot of clients come in and they're like, no, I already bought one. It didn't work. And then I say, can you show me what it looks like? And this is often what they're coming in with. They're coming in with something skinny. So it's the same idea, okay? It gives support to my pelvis, but it's just not meant for pregnancy. Like you're gonna find that you can't get it around your, it's not meant to go on your belly. It's meant to go kind of across here, but you just won't feel like it fits very well. I would say it's meant more for non-pregnant people. So I would, even if someone suggests you buy that one for pregnancy, I would try it on, but I don't think you'll find it as comfortable. Anyway, guys, oh, here you go, Kim. Yeah, so this one, like I said, there are so many on the market. This one is called the Mom Ease, M-O-M-E-Z. And that's the one I wore. I recommend it all the time. There's also an excellent one. I don't have it here with me. I can link a picture, actually, after this that shows it's made by Diane Lee, who's a very well-known pelvic health physical therapist. She makes one that's very similar to the white one, but I would say it's a bit smaller profile. And it has a little bit more like customizability, so that those straps that I pulled around the front can also be pulled around the back to give people a little bit more SI joint support. So like I said, so many on the market, so I wouldn't even begin to tell you all of them. The mummies I can just vouch for because I wore it. I generally, because it's not super sexy, not that I'm a vain person, but I wasn't going to walk around town with that on. So generally I would kind of layer like tank, belt, shirt or whatever. That one there, you're going to pay around $90 Canadian. The one that Diane Lee makes is closer to $180. So definitely not cheap, but you can get cheaper. But I think you'd notice you'd compromise like comfort and you'd compromise like durability. Some of them that people have brought in, I look at them like, this is way too flimsy to give you any type of support. So I know everything's weird with COVID and there's so much online shopping right now. If you have the option to try something on, I would encourage it. Um, yeah, but food for thought. Um, yeah, I think that kind of answers most of the stuff that you guys have asked. If there's anything else before I go, um, otherwise, I hope that was helpful to all of you. And I am going to this recording will stay in the Mommy Berries community. I would love for you to let any friends you know that are pregnant or postpartum know about this community, because I just want as many people to have this information as possible. The number of people that kind of message me and say like, oh, why isn't this information readily available? Shocks me. So please do share this information. And again, I would love to hear kind of any questions or comments that come out of watching this, because it really helps me know what type of content to put together for you guys. Any of you that are pregnant and expecting a baby, I would highly suggest my postpartum program. It's called From the Inside Out, and it gives you an idea of where you should be starting with kind of pelvic floor and core, I always say coordination at the beginning. And just, teaching your body how to connect the dots again so that you can recover in a good way, okay? What would you recommend for pain during walking? I have started engaging my glutes more for stability. Just wondering if I need to do more. Honestly, Piper, like one of the first things I would consider is like kind of how are you walking? And like, do you feel like you're kind of pulling yourself forward, or do you feel like you're pushing yourself forward? Meaning, if your posture is a little bit more like this, are you kind of like, do you know what I mean? Are your hip flexors what's pulling you forward, or are your glutes pushing you forward? I'd highly recommend a pregnancy support belt probably for you if that's kind of not helping. I don't think you necessarily need to be walking and clenching your glutes every single step, because that can be overkill. I actually saw a girl yesterday in the clinic that was like, I'm engaging all the time. I was like, no muscle wants to feel engaged all the time. And so I would think about your posture and how you're carrying yourself. Do you need a belt? And you mentioned the stairs, same thing. Sometimes for people, I would want to see your glute contraction. I would want to check those groin muscles and just see like what's actually happening. Again, you might just be someone, and that's the thing. Some people are like, oh my gosh, those exercises worked like a hot down. Like right away, it took the pain away. And other people are like, no, it's not totally gone. I needed to do those for maintenance pretty well every day for like 5 minutes. Plus, I needed the belt. No matter how many exercises I did, I needed it. And so that's probably where I would go to next for you. Anyway, guys, I have to go get my son from daycare now. I hope that you have a great day, and I look forward to